Welcome, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. You know what? Before we dive into content, I have a quick poll I want to launch. Because if you've been to one of my webinars, I love my polls, right? So I'm interested in how you think you're doing today. Today we're talking about. I guess I should back up a little bit. Today I'm excited to welcome Rob Scott, co-founder of Monjur. Rob is a seasoned attorney who has spent his career helping MSPs protect themselves legally while running stronger businesses. And at Monjur, he and his team created like contracts as a service that give MSPs continuously updated cloud based legal agreements that address everything from vendor risk to evolving regulations. His work's all about making contracts not just protective, but practical, so that way they're built into the MSP workflow so that you guys can get paid on time and reduce your liability. He's also a frequent speaker in the space, known for simplifying complex legal concepts into actionable advice. We're lucky to have him here. Welcome, Rob. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. So, for those of you that signed up and paid attention to what you were signing up for, you know that we're going to talk about getting you paid before you do the work. So, the poll that I launched just a moment ago is basically I'm curious where you guys think you are. And don't worry, I'm not going to share your answers with the room. I mean, I'll share like the group of answers, but I'm not going to say like Claudia said this. Like that would be rude. Sorry if you're an introvert, Claudia, and I just made everyone look at you. The first question I asked Rob was, do you have a signed agreement in place with every customer today? And we've got a couple people who said, yes, every customer signs an agreement. Most people have said, yes, but some may be expired or out of date. And then the runner up is some do, some don't. So thankfully, nobody yet has responded with no, not really. For the second question, I asked, who drafted your client contract? And by a landslide, most people are saying an MSP focused law firm. So that's
Awesome.
good. That's good. That
Really
means they're
good.
working with somebody that understands our industry.
Yeah, that's really good.
We have a few people who each said a local attorney or a legal subscription service, something like Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, but nobody said that they're using like a template.
Okay. I consider that positive
Yeah.
to an extent.
we've we've that just means that there's room for improvement.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The next question, how quickly do you get paid once you send the invoice? If we're talking about getting paid before you do the work, well, let's get you paid quick too, right? So nobody gets paid in under 15 days. Most of them are paid in 15 to 30. The rest are 30 to 45. Nobody says they get paid in 45 or more days. And then for automating the accounts receivable process today, most everyone is partially automated and some people are completely manual. Nobody has fully automated their accounts receivable process. So interesting results.
Very,
Interesting results.
very.
Yeah.
Some of those are easy fixes and others not so easy. But the
I
one
th-
that's the most interesting to me is the answers on the timing of payment.
mhm.
And I just think it reflects the evolution of managed services from consulting and advisory roles, where people were accustomed to charging and paying on a professional services model, to a more cloud-oriented or centered approach, where people are accustomed to paying upfront. You sign a managed services contract, it starts that day, they pay a deposit that day for the first month. That's my vision of how managed services should work. In other words, you get prepaid contractually. But I think that the history has been, If you work for businesses, you're a professional service provider, you bill them, then they get 30 days to pay. But in my mind, IT managed services are not professional services in the traditional sense. And to the extent that they're recurring, they should be paid upfront and automated. Two of the key benefits of fixed pricing are reduction in accounts receivable risk and reduction in back office expenses. And so, as easy as you give me access to your agreements, I could fix the timing question of when you get paid, because your contracts could say the payment is on day one of month one, and then
Mhm.
it's 30 days thereafter. So you're never in arrears. So you're getting contractually paid before you start work. And we recommend this approach to all of our clients, because why take accounts receivable risk on a fixed price long-term contract?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, with that, I appreciate everybody uh, participating in that, helping us get to know you a little bit better. What I'd like to do is help you get to know Rob a little bit better. And in order to do that, I'm going to ask him some questions, and then I'm going to interview Rob about some contract clauses that's going to help you get paid before doing the work. We're going to wrap up with an Ask Me Anything session where you can ask Rob questions. If you want, you can ask me questions. You can ask anything. We may not answer anything, but you can ask whatever you guys want. So let's just dive in. Rob, can you share the story? How did you go from practicing law to co-founding Monjur?
Well, around 2020, we had about 175 MSP clients that had used our firm over the years for advice or development of customer contracts for managed services.
Mhm.
And we noticed that things were changing quickly, but we had no real way to keep them updated. We would send them an email, as crazy as this sounds today. We would send them an email with Word documents of their new agreements. And then we would consider the matter concluded unless they had additional questions. And so we had no way to keep them updated. And as a consequence, only the next client got the right agreements, and everyone else was sort of left holding the bag.
Yeah,
And so we created an internal project called TechZoom that was a cloud native approach to allow us to dynamically update our clients' contracts at scale, so that we would have the ability to push changes in an MSA, for example, in a data processing agreement because a new law came out, and be able to dynamically update our clients' agreements within their CRM or quoting tools without our clients having to do anything but approve of whatever the changes were.
hmm,
And so in 2022, we launched the Monjur platform. As you mentioned, we think it was the first of its kind contract as a service platform. And 3 years ago, that was a really cool kind of high tech thing to be. Today, Monjur is an AI powered legal intelligence platform where we've taken our former legal libraries that powered our cloud platform and turned them into knowledge bases for AI.
interesting. I gotta say, there's probably what, three or four camps when it comes to AI. There's the guys who are really bullish on the concept. They plug everything into AI. They don't worry about the security of the data. They just punch everything in, right? And then there's the people who are like, I like AI. I think it's the future, but I got to be real careful about what we give it access to. And then there's the people who think this is just some gimmick and there's going to be it's a bubble, it's going to burst, and then the real AI thing is going to happen in a few years. And then there's the people who think that we're building the Terminator, and you've seen the movies. So I suspect you are obviously, talking about AI for your platform, from the second camp of AI is good, but let's be careful of what we give it access to, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we built a platform because we didn't have any confidence in the ability of the existing, large language model platforms to accurately deliver legal services that we would be willing to stand behind. So we needed to fix things like core OS instruction compliance, frequent hallucination, loss of context, truncation, summarization, all of these things are bad for legal application.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
And who is using the AI? Is it mostly you and your team behind the scenes? Are the MSPs interacting with the AI, or is it both?
It's both. So if you think about where we are today in our journey, we are thinking about AI providing 24/7 legal support to our subscribers. So we've trained the AI on thousands of interactions between our lawyers and our MSP customers. We've put those in knowledge bases. We've put those knowledge bases in legal grade, GDPR, compliant, SOC 2 certified, dedicated RAG environments for each of our clients. And as a result, we could turn their template libraries that we were managing before into knowledge bases and deliver to them a chat experience that's limited in context to their legal libraries that are delivered through Monjur, as well as learnings and trainings that are solely pulled from the knowledge bases that we've developed and the attorneys continuously train and monitor.
Man, that is cool. I've got so many more questions about this just because I'm fascinated by it, but that's not what everyone's here for. So I'm gonna tell myself to stop it. All right, so we talked about what Monjur is. What do you think the biggest misconceptions that MSPs have about contracts that maybe you'd like to clear up right at the start here?
I would say that there's a difference between contracts and term of commitment. So I think sometimes MSPs confound the two. So you could have a contract that has a month-to-month term with so no commitment, but there's still terms and conditions that are applicable to the services provided. I would say that is one of the big misconceptions. You can still run a business that is, we don't like to bind our clients to long-term contracts, and we think it's better if they never renew and they're just month to month perpetually. I'm okay with that if that's where you land from a business perspective, but the terms and conditions need to be built in a way that protects you and keeps your business compliant, whether you offer month to month or 3-year term.
So we're going to dive into some contract clauses now, folks. And I just want to say before we get started, the chat, the Q&A, they're all open. It's here for you. Feel free to interact with us. Rob, I'll like moderate the chat, so don't feel like you have to watch that. I'll be the voice of the people, and we'll
As
we'll just keep
always.
going through. So we've got a trick question. What would you say is the most important contract clause to ensure MSPs get paid on time every time?
I would say payment terms provisions are probably the most applicable directly because they speak expressly to the timing, the amount, and the consequences of late payments, for example. So the payment terms speak, directly to the obligations. There are other provisions that give the MSP leverage to enforce those provisions. The one that comes to mind is the suspension of services provisions.
Mhm.
In our agreements, if a customer doesn't pay, then upon 10 days notice, MSP can terminate services. So the termination of services clause helps MSPs enforce the payment terms clauses that speak directly to the question around which ones are most important.
Yeah, so let's kind of suss that out a little bit. So when you say payment terms, are you basically saying we're going to send you an invoice and you have to pay it within X number of days? Like that's payment terms, right?
That would be an example.
Okay.
But the articulation that I gave earlier would also be a type of payment term, which is month one and setup fees are due upon signing. That is a type of payment term.
Okay. Would you say that you've got to keep active, accurate payment information on file, and we get to automatically charge your account whenever the invoice is created? Is that a payment term or is that a different type of clause?
That is a payment term.
Man, I feel like there could be all sorts of things that you're including in payment terms.
I agree. We could get granular. So if you'd like to talk about auto enrollment provisions, which are similar to what you just described, you can consider that to be part of payment terms or not. I think most would consider it to be a subset of payment terms. But what these provisions include, which we recommend, is that the customer could either pay through ACH, either for free or at some reduced merchant fee, or with a credit card at some additional merchant fee cost, but that all customers are required to enroll in autopay. I think every MSP contract should require enrollment in autopay.
Amen to that, brother.
Another example of a provision you may or may not consider to be in payment terms is what happens when the autopay enrollment is interrupted, failed payment notices. You know, if I actually got $75 for every time someone on the Monjur platform had an issue with a credit card, I would make a lot of money. I personally
Ooh,
don't enforce it. It's in the contract. It says if you have a failed payment and we have to notify you and we help you set up a new payment method, there's a $75 processing fee for that. That is a type of payment term, but it would be a either a failed payment fee or a reprocessing fee or something of that type, which if you want to charge that, you need to make sure it's clearly disclosed in the agreement.
so you opened the door. So now I've got to ask the question, Rob. So I've always been told, whatever you put in your contract and your agreements, you have to enforce. Because if you don't enforce what's in the agreements, then you are in breach of those agreements as well. Is that a thing?
No, whoever told you that should double check on their status of their license. Because most contracts say if I waive one right, it's not any implied waiver against any other right. And for the
Okay.
example I just provided is a perfect example. My contract says if my customers have a payment failure issue, it's $75 fee. I've
Mhm.
never charged it one time. Doesn't mean I can't hold them to my license. Doesn't mean I couldn't sue them if they didn't pay in the future. And I
Got it.
don't waive all those rights just because I didn't enforce one particular provision against them. That's not a thing.
Okay. And you don't have to say anything like, hey, I should have charged you 75, but I'm going to waive that. Like you can just choose to not enforce something in your contract.
100%.
Okay. Now, we also talked about auto payment there for a moment. Big fan. So sometimes MSPs have asked me the question, why would I require auto payment or keeping payment information on file uh, if there's risk for the MSP, but also risk for the client, right? So like overcharging disputes. So how do you build the fairness in so clients trust that kind of clause? Or is that even an issue that comes up? Are MSPs just worrying about nothing?
I think there is an issue when it comes to a business owner, an MSP or otherwise, thinking about what is the proper role of processing, and what of that risk do I want to take on internally, and what of that risk do I want to outsource? And, we, for example, don't collect credit card information from our clients. We use HubSpot Payments, and they're a third-party processor for our platform. And so they are in the position of making sure that they have all the compliance and they are responsible if something goes wrong. So for both me and the customer, there is a third party involved who is responsible for, in a compliant manner, administering those funds. So from my perspective, what I think is, it's not worth it for MSPs to take that risk on, but it doesn't mean that they should forego the opportunity to collect payments in electronic means exclusively. So what that means for us is either ACH or credit card only.
Okay. Now, when I ran my MSP, for those of you who didn't know, I started an MSP back in 2009, ran it for a little over 13 years, and now I do webinars and marketing for alternative payments. Um, when I ran my MSP, I never wanted to be like my client's bank. That was one thing I learned early on is don't be the bank. So one thing I did in advance, or one thing I did early was bill them in advance instead of in arrears. Is this something that you should include in your contract so the client understands what and when they're paying for?
Yes, I think the client should be made it clear in the agreement that you charge by the month. The first month is due upon signing, and that the charges for subsequent months are due 30 days after the first charge, and that all payments require auto enrollment, either through a credit card where there's a merchant fee charge would be best practices. I candidly have to admit we don't charge credit card fees, but best practice would be to charge the fee and to give either a credit card or an ACH option. And that's it. It's auto enroll. It's every 30 days. They pay upfront for that month. If they don't pay the month that they're due, by the time that you get to the end of that month, you're only out 1 month.
Got it.
So this is how you protect yourself from non-payment and from accounts receivable risk. If the clients are paying in advance, you already know by the middle of the month whether or not you got a payment problem. You not already after the first month, now 30 days to pay. Now you could be 60 days. They run it for 30 more. Now you're at 90. You're already in the red zone of risk from a accounts receivable perspective. So requiring your customers to pay upfront is a cloud-oriented approach. It's very common in managed services today. Most customers, if you just present it to them that way, they won't even raise an eyebrow. You just present it as that's the way you normally work. Migrating your existing customers to the new approach may be more challenging, but certainly no reason not to be presenting your new customers with this new approach.
And you mentioned the credit card fees, so I'll just segue into that question. Um, some companies, major software distributors, for example, have maybe decided to start charging fees like 3% or whatever whenever somebody pays with a credit card. That is actually a normal practice. In fact, there's a little mom and pop shop in the middle of nowhere that charges like $8 for a gallon of milk because if you want it that bad, you'll get it, or you'll drive 25 minutes and go get it somewhere else. Um, and they charge 3% if you're going to pay with a credit card. Otherwise, you can give them cash. So, should MSPs be doing that? And it sounded like you said yes. And if they're doing that, how do they add that to their agreement?
So I would have to say best practices is yes. If someone once asked me if a PE firm took over Monjur, what's the first thing they changed? My answer was they would immediately start charging credit card fees. I don't charge credit card fees because I'm old school. It rubs me the wrong way when people charge me credit card fees. I care about my clients. We're doing okay financially. I don't charge them. I should, but I don't. So, in answer to your question, yes, MSPs should charge it. And number two, how do you write it in? It's through the auto enrollment clauses. So you in the auto enrollment clause, you identify the applicable fee. If you want to take Bitcoin, identify how you charge for that. If you want to take ACH, you identify typically a lower rate than the credit card, if any. But if there is going to be a rate for ACH, it should be specified as well. All credit card transactions are subject to a credit card transaction fee. And I think the typical market is 3%.
Mhm.
And you may have clients that say, I don't want to pay the 3%, to whom you could say, pay by ACH.
Right.
When they say, I want to pay by credit card and I don't want to pay a credit card fee, look at that as a 3% price negotiation.
Hmm.
The benefit to you is back office automation, standardization, scalability, and you can offset the cost of the merchant fees so that if it's a convenience for the customer could pay the fee. If it's not a convenient way for the customer, doesn't want to pay the fee, you offer them an ACH option that's either free or very low cost.
Excellent. And I actually have a solution for those of you who maybe have that prospect, client, whatever, who wants to pay with credit card, doesn't want to pay the fee. If it's something you want to learn more about, ask me later in the AMA portion. So I see a question in the Q&A that ties into my next question. So I'm going to ask mine first, and then I'll bridge this in so we can expand on it. How should contracts handle service suspension or termination for non-payment?
So there's separate concepts.
Mhm.
So if you think about it, it's a two-step dance. It starts with suspension of services and it results in termination of the contract. So the way the contract that we construct is written is that if a customer has not paid their contract within fill in the blank, typically 45 to 90 days, then upon 10 days notice written, then provider can suspend services. What that means is, hey, you haven't paid in 10 days. If you don't get current in 10 days, you're subject to interruption.
Let's say today's the 23rd. Let's say the invoice is due today. So 10 days from today is 7, 8, 9, 10, the 3rd of October.
Mhm.
So does that mean I notify them today that, hey, your invoice was due, it wasn't paid, I'm shutting you off in the 3rd? Or do I notify you on the 3rd that I'm shutting you off on the 3rd? Or do I notify you on the 3rd that you're 10 days late? If it goes 10 more days, I'm shutting you off on the, what is it, the 13th?
The dates are, subject to some massaging, but the mechanics are the third example you gave.
Okay.
So you're going to done them. Your invoice is available. Your invoice is a week old. Your invoice is 2 weeks old, right? So whatever normal dunning, that escalates into the suspension notice, right? So if
Mhm.
you think about the way you do your dunning notices, one of those dunning notices it becomes the notice of suspension. The end of the hey, hurry up and pay becomes, hey, you haven't paid. I'm about to suspend you unless you pay.
Mhm.
So if you think about it in that way, it can be programmed into your dunning notices. And the dates are up to you. You know, I typically like to think in terms of wanting to escalate at 60 and certainly before 90, because the research shows that once you start getting past 90, those dollars become at risk. So the sooner you can escalate in the 60-day range, the better. And now, if you're following the prepay model, your days could be 7, 10, similar to what Steve is using as examples, because they were required to pay, their credit card failed. 1 week is a reasonable enough amount of time for them to get that remedied. So a lot depends on how you do your suspension. A lot depends on your payment terms. But the concept is, I have to give you notice that I'm going to turn you off before I turn you off. Once I give you that notice on the 10th day, you're subject to being terminated. And then if they're terminated, they're subject to a reactivation fee
Mhm.
if they want to turn back on after that.
And I've even seen MSPs do a reactivation fee just from suspension.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And and look, just like how Rob said he doesn't enforce some of his fees, um, you put them in the contract because if you let's just be honest, if you have a client who's being an asshole, now you can enforce the agreement to the letter. If you have a client who's being like super reasonable, they're forthcoming, they're transparent with you. Hey, we had a rough month. We need a couple extra weeks because this client said they need a couple extra weeks. Can you work with us? Yeah, you can do whatever you want because Rob said you don't have to follow it to the letter. That doesn't mean the contract's null and void just because you changed something, right? You just can't change the contract. You can change how you enforce it. Is that accurate?
I mean, you can
You
change
can't you
the
can't make
contract.
it you can't enforce it harder. You can't
Yes.
be like more strict than the contract says. But if you want to, be a little more loose on the contract terms than what the contract states, it sounds like you can uh maybe to an extent. But
No,
that's
absolutely. I just want to
yeah,
be on these, what MSPs would consider draconian or unfriendly terms that are built for their protection. Nobody's requiring you to enforce this against your friends or your family or against
right.
clients that you want to trade easy with. These are
Right.
provisions to protect you when you have the problem customer.
Mhm.
That's really what it's for. For, like I said, I require credit card failure fees in my agreements. We get them not every day, but we get them many a month. We've never charged $175 fee ever.
Good for you, man.
So,
And that just goes to show that Rob doesn't have a bunch of a-hole MSPs that he's working with. So I asked in chat, nobody answered. It's okay. Um, so I'm gonna just make a blanket statement, and it could be off by whatever, a few bucks or whatever. But with Microsoft 365, when you pay month to month, let's just say it's $15 a month for an office license. And if you commit to an annual agreement, still paying monthly, maybe now it's $14. Like you might save $1 per license per month just by committing to annual. And I have no idea if that fluctuates. Maybe it's not a whole dollar when it's just the cheap little exchange E1 or whatever they call it plan. And maybe it's more than $1 if it's like an E5 license, right? Or I don't know, do they have E7 now? Like it's just one of the crazy expensive $40 licenses. It might be more than $1. No idea. But anyway, somebody said if you have a clause about termination of services for non-payment, what can you do if you're an MSP and you purchase Microsoft 365 licenses on an annual commitment? How would you bill that client for the remaining months if you cancel services for non-payment?
excellent question. The first is the underlying problem is you're in a contract with a vendor that you've prepaid for.
Mhm.
and your customer now owes you money for.
Mhm.
You should avoid that.
Yeah.
If your client wants the value of the prepay, they have to prepay. In other words, if they want the annual commit, they've got to prepay the annual commit. That way you're not exposed if they terminate. My agreement says they owe you that money. They owe you 50% of the remaining term together with any out of pockets. So they owe it to you, but now how do you go collect it? Are you really going to hire me to go file an arbitration to collect that NCE for the balance of the year? Probably not. And so that's why it's so important to build a process around why you don't wind up in that position in the first place. And there's a number of strategies. Number one, let your client buy the Microsoft directly.
Mhm.
Number two, only give them the discount if they prepay. Number three, um, prepay for everybody, but charge everybody full price. So now you're in the risk business. You get some of the reward for the people who don't churn.
And I have my own opinion about this. My own opinion is, look, it doesn't matter if you're hosting 30 licenses, 300 licenses, 3,000 licenses. The amount of money, like on a standard Microsoft 365, what is it, business premium, I think it's like $20 a month, right? I think you save $1 to do an annual commit paid monthly per month per license. $1. $1 across 3,000 licenses. We're talking 3,000 a month. Sure, that sounds like a lot of money. But if you're supporting 3,000 end users, chances are you're making quick math, 600,000 a month in revenue. Because, on average, I think a lot of MSPs are doing like 200 per user, whether you are doing granular billing and splitting things out or you're just lumping it all together, right? If you're less than that, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not saying you're not good at what you do. I'm just making numbers up, okay? But for 600,000 a month, just eat the 3 grand and just do month to month billing, unless the client, like Rob said, unless the client wants to actually pay for the whole month, or I'm sorry, for the whole year. Just do month to month, man, because it's never going to end well for you. Because I want to be quick about this one. Some say, Rob, a contract is only as good as what you're willing to spend to enforce it. Litigation, arbitration, collections. So, like, how do MSPs decide what's worth enforcing versus letting go? And I'm not talking about the $75 you didn't pay us correctly fee. I'm talking about this kind of stuff.
I mean, this one is a piece of it. The bigger piece is the early termination fees.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the MSP is saying, this guy terminated early. I gave him some discounts early. He committed to a long term. I gave him pricing for a 3-year term. He's only stayed in a year and a half. I got a year and a half at 5,000 a month. What do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the concept here is called amount in controversy. Like, what if you added up all the money that you're likely to be owed? What is that total dollar amount? And does that total dollar amount justify pursuing an arbitration claim? With our agreements, we make it to where everything has to be resolved through arbitration. In many cases, we could get expedited hearing in 30 days. And so we've designed the agreements to make it to where, cost to go to court is as low as possible, but there's still some significant cost. So I would say if you don't have 25,000 or more in controversy, it's probably not worth considering filing a case. Um, doesn't mean you wouldn't want to have a lawyer write a letter or make a phone call or something like that, but to actually file an arbitration case, amounts in controversy typically for cases that go to court are much closer to 6 figures than 20,000. So I would say certainly wouldn't consider something under 25,000. And frequently, as you get into the 6 figure and up range, then it becomes, you know, probably incumbent upon you to consider your litigation alternatives.
Absolutely. And we still have a couple more clauses I want to go over. We still have the AMA coming up. But first, everything Rob's been sharing today really underscores the point. Contracts set the foundation for getting paid. But here's the thing: if you have the right clauses in place, um, even if you have the right clauses in place, if your billing process is clunky, you're still probably leaving money on the table. And that's exactly why we built alternative payments. We are a purpose built platform for MSPs that automates the entire accounts receivable process. So, if you think about some of the problems you might be dealing with right now, like sending invoices by hand and chasing down late payments, clients who only pay by check, which slows everything down. You're absorbing the credit card fees, which Rob suggested not doing, but he's old school. He doesn't want to do that, right? You don't have to. Spending hours reconciling payments in QuickBooks or your PSA. We solve those headaches by giving you a platform where invoices can go out automatically from your PSA. Auto pay runs whenever the rule is set to run for each individual invoice without you lifting a finger. Clients can pay online 24/7 through a secure portal that is really easy for them to use and they will like. You can accept both ACH and credit cards, and you can even pass the card fees back to clients if you want, and you can do granular skip this person because I've got a sweetheart deal with them if you want to do that as well. All of it integrates with your PSA, your accounting tools. Reconciliation is seamless. The result: MSPs using alternative payments are getting paid faster, cutting their days sales outstanding nearly in half, recovering margins they used to lose. It's about giving you predictable, consistent cash flow without all the manual work. Now, I want to be really clear. This isn't a hard sales pitch, even though it probably sounds like one. But what we would love to do is show you just how easy it is to set up and use our platform. Even if you just treat this as a chance to learn how over 1,000 MSPs are solving these exact problems, it's worth your time. So here's my simple ask. If you want to get paid faster, more consistently every single month, let's have a conversation. No pressure, no obligation, just an opportunity to see what's possible and get some ideas for your own business. I'll make it easy. Just answer the poll. Let me know. With that, we're going to dive right back in. I'll leave that poll up for you guys for a moment. Rob, before we dive completely back in, what are your thoughts on MSPs using a platform like ours? Does this align with your own philosophy on getting MSPs paid before they do the work?
100%. I would say also just the back office automation. You know, I come from a traditional professional service where we used to do hourly billing, and I was paying people to do billing and back office functions that added zero value to my customers. And I just think with automation platforms, you get predictable results,
Mhm.
and cash flow improves, labor costs go down. And what you see is that things like accounts receivable management are fully amenable to automation. And now you're just dealing with the exceptions. So for us, we have everything's on autopilot. Then there's a failed payment and it triggers another automated workflow, right? And then we got an AI agent that calls, if it doesn't get resolved. So I think the ability to automate these back office functions allows you to spend a lot more time doing more important work, like talking to your customers. And the more you can automate these administrative tasks, the more successful and more scalable your business will become.
Awesome. Now, before I dive back into my questions, I see I've got two, I think they're related ish questions. So I'm going to ask these first. How often do you exercise your cancellation clauses with customers? We have 5+ year old customers that have been as many as 5 months behind multiple times, but they'll pay a 15% late fee on each of those invoices and do not complain about paying them. So, in the IT business we're in, if we shut off our customer services, we're never getting paid because we'll have completely shut down their ability to do business. How do you navigate this problem?
Well, I think you've conditioned your customers to be their bank, and you're doing well with it at 15%. And if it works for you from a business perspective, that's up to you. Most MSPs don't want to be in the banking business, even at 15% returns, because it interferes with their, daily operations, which are built on an MRR structure, which dictates their expense structure. And if they have customers not paying for significant periods, it causes all kinds of havoc. So I would say that, a lot of it's how you just what you tolerate. If you tolerate it one time and they pay it, then the next time, they need to borrow some money from you, they'll just borrow it. So yeah, I have some concerns about, how scalable that kind of an approach is. It sounds very relationship oriented and not very scalable, which is up to you. That's a business decision. I would say, crippling your clients' businesses because they don't pay. Old ladies die of, pneumonia when electric utility services get turned off. And it's a terrible thing, but the utilities still get turned off when people
Mm-hmm.
don't pay. And what I think is that MSPs should not be obligated just because they're in mission critical businesses to turn their customers off. That's just a good reason for their customers to pay to avoid getting shut off. And
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, turning your customers off is a very risky thing to do. And many of my clients have been sued because of it. And yeah, I see Doug's post here, which I totally agree with. It's shocking how quickly they can pay when you show them how serious you are about enforcing your payment term.
I got to tell you, Verizon doesn't feel bad about doing it. So
No,
neither should
yeah,
you.
yeah, I agree. And you need to be careful. There are rules like in healthcare. If you service a healthcare client, you can't just willy-nilly shut them off because you can expose yourself to liability under HIPAA and other rules. So you need to be careful about how you exercise your rights under your agreements. But that being said, I don't want any MSP to feel like they have to perform services without getting paid, because that's not my vision for how managed services are delivered and how the contract should be written.
Well, we've got just a little bit more, guys. But first, Rob, I want to ask. Uh, I think it's pretty obvious. We all know what you do, and we also know how you do it. You offer contracts as a service for MSPs. The biggest difference is you're not just writing a contract and it's a Word doc, delivering it, and then it's never updated again. This is like an ongoing updates kind of thing. So, do you have like an elevator pitch of what you do, why, how you do it, maybe pricing or ballpark, any of that you want to include?
Sure. So we help MSPs sleep better at night by providing comprehensive legal protections, all for the cost of about one billable hour per month. So our essentials tier product, which is unlimited in terms of libraries, which also comes with legal office hours each week, as well as access to our AI platform, is $299 a month and is available to MSPs with revenues of 1.5 million and below. That's annual revenues. Uh, the second tier that we have is called Standard Unlimited. It's $5.99 per month. It includes all libraries. It also includes full customization and personalization of all of your legal agreements, as well as a dedicated legal RAG environment within Monjur Pilot's AI platform, which includes customized legal knowledge bases, as well as customized legal assistance. And that all that is included in the subscription of $5.99 per month. And all of our subscriptions are 90 days satisfaction guarantee. And we usually offer no setup fees or $1 setups. And from time to time, we also offer risk-free trial promotions of 1 to 3 months at the
That is
convenience store.
incredible. Was absolutely incredible. So as you could probably tell by now, Rob is an absolute wealth of knowledge. He knows the MSP space well. I'm sure he's got some great ideas to help you specifically with getting paid on time consistently every time from all of your clients. So I popped up a poll. If you're interested in having a conversation with Rob and his team, where you can ask some more maybe private, detailed questions about how they can help your specific MSP, just answer the poll, let us know. um, our time is actually almost up, so what I'm going to do is we're going to skip most of my questions. We're going to skip right over to the AMA portion. While I'm going to leave this poll up for Monjur for just a few more seconds. In the AMA section here, I'm going to start with this other anonymous question. So, how are we enforcing these terms with clients who are a problem, but we otherwise have a good relationship with them? Or, in other words, how do you maintain a relationship with clients and enforce terms like this when needed, especially for a smaller MSP who's very relational with clients at this stage? And what's really interesting, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut myself off here. MSPs, when they're smaller, they think they're more relational than bigger ones. I always find that so fascinating. But they've got a larger client who doesn't mind paying late fees if they're late. They'll meet to give a check for more than what they owe every few months if necessary. But as the only client who's not on auto pay, they're constantly late on payment. So, any suggestions?
Look, I think again, it's about a candid conversation. I see in 11 of the 13 respondents in the poll are my clients. You guys know how we talk. If
Mhm.
you have an issue with a lawyer at Monjur, we speak to you in a very respectful but very direct way. And I think that you can still be relational with your customers and explain to them that um, the impact of their payment history on your business, and as a result, the desirability of having them to continue. And then you can say with them, I'd love for you to continue. But if you can't pay like every one of our other clients pay, that's an indication that we're no longer a good fit. And we can continue to be friends and we can continue to support you through a transition. But if you need a provider that gets paid 3 times a year and I need to get paid 12 times a year, then we're no longer a good fit for you.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, but I'm not opposed to only getting paid 3 times a year, but maybe we need to rework our agreement so that way this is set up in a more ideal situation for both of us. Because if I'm getting paid 3 or 4 times a year, at least I know when I'm getting paid, and I can plan accordingly, and I can bill you accordingly too.
And
And then
and
everyone's
listen,
happy.
I'm fine with taking quarterly payments. I don't have an
Yeah.
issue with that. Like, if you want to add 15% to your fees and just make it to where the client pays quarterly, I'm cool with that too. I
Yeah.
just I just think that what you find is you have more room to maneuver with your clients by having a heart to heart with them in an appropriate way
Mhm.
and saying, look, I had a review of your account with my finance team and they pointed out to me that the history of this account is presenting some challenges for us, and I wanted to speak to you about it.
Beautiful.
And they may not even know it's a problem for you.
So I have one more question. I may have a sub question to go with that, Rob, but I've got one last question I want to do. With that, if any of you have any questions that I could not get to, I did pop up one last poll, and it's literally just like some space. That way, if you want to ask some extra questions, we'll get back to you. We'll answer those questions for you. It just won't be in the webinar. Um, so, with that said, longer term agreements. Uh, I know plenty of MSPs who are like, oh, I only do month to month, terms because my service speaks for itself. And if a client thinks I suck at what I do, they should be able to leave. But then I know other MSPs who are all about those, 3-year agreements. I know one guy who just did a 5-year agreement with somebody. And I mean, that sounds insane to me. And I know that there are reasons you would do that, like if you're looking to do M&A type of stuff, right? So I understand that. If you're looking to get acquired, you want to have that 3-year agreement on file for everybody. But why do you need that if you're not trying to get acquired? Do they help or hurt MSPs?
Couple things there. Uh, our agreements pick up whatever term is in the order. So if you specify in the order month to month or specify no term, it's deemed to be month to month. You could specify whatever term you want. Our agreements handle that. As to the business side of term, you don't get to flip the switch, Steve, and say, poof, I want all my contracts on all my customers on 3-year terms. The way you get to that when it's time to do M&A is by creating a culture that requires that as you go.
Mhm.
So I caution you to say, if you're doing M&A, you need it. If you're not doing M&A, you don't. I look at that as justifying the reason to do it because it adds enterprise value, makes the business worth more, whether it's in your hands to sell today or in your hands to keep. The truth of the matter is, businesses that can sign 3-year deals with customers will have strong trust with those customers, and the market will value that, especially if they're not cancelable for convenience. Because as a buyer, you're looking to preserve that relationship and that revenue after a transaction. So if you're building a business, why not build it to sell, whether you're planning to keep it or not? So that's my answer on the terms. I also understand that some people believe that their brand is tied up and not committing their people to terms. And if that's your brand and that's working for you, then I can't give you a legal reason to change your brand. What I would suggest to you is you may think that's your brand, but that's not really your brand. And if you started presenting your customers with 3-year deals, some would sign it. But why not give them the option to take the 3-year deal at your current price and the annual deal at 20% more than the 3-year deal, or the month-to-month deal at 25% more than the 3-year? So each customer could pick which plan is best for them, instead of us sitting up here pontificating about which one of these 3 alternatives will fit everyone. Why not create a strategy where everyone gets to pick their own? And so I've
Mhm.
helped clients program tools to allow customers to pick the term and the pricing that goes with it.
And then along with those agreements, whether your customer chooses or you choose to do month to month, 1 year, 3-year, 5-year, um, I'm sure Rob would also recommend having automatic renewals with certain timeframes for cancellation, and also like annual like increases. I'm going to call them like a cost of living raise, right? And then you also, I've seen where some people have said, look, if Microsoft raises the price on these licenses, I have to raise the price too. And I'm sure there's a way for you to put that in the contract too, right, Rob?
Yeah, so let's run through all of those to get, separately. So price increases 10% per year without getting a new signature is what we recommend.
Mhm.
You get to pass through all the incremental price changes to your customers from third-party vendors, and you still get to preserve your margin on those increases. No new signature required. With respect to auto renew, the FTC recently passed a rule that auto renewals are subject to very strict rules. That FTC rule was then stayed in a court. A federal court has now put a stay on that pending hearing that case and challenges to the regulation. But there are state and federal laws that impact auto renew. So we put them in our agreements, but we encourage our clients to implement account management strategies where they never have to rely on that. That in and around the time that customers would be auto renewing. They're presenting them with new proposals, new uplifts, new packages, different quantities. So they're not exclusively relying on the auto renewals because those can become increasingly challenging. And it's our view that even if this particular case with the FTC is stalled out, the trend is toward stricter controls over the reliance on auto renewals, and we advise our clients accordingly.
Excellent. Well, Rob, I gotta say, this was amazing. I've learned a lot. Hopefully, everyone else here has learned a lot. But that is all the time that we have today, folks. So thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to see you all at the next webinar. Thursday, I'm meeting with Josh from QuoteWorks. So if any of you are QuoteWorks users or considering it, check out our website or shoot me a reply, and I'll get you that registration link. Thanks so much, everybody. You all have a great rest of your day. Take care.